Hey everyone, it's Professor Snart checking in here. It is Wednesday morning, September 18th, as I'm recording this, so we can take a quick look into our due dates just to see where we're at. Okay, so we are just kind of finishing up. We have finished up actually the main work for the Unit 2, our look at short fiction, primarily short fiction structure, but also a few other related short story terminology type things. And then we have the reply component due no later than Thursday. And so again, this is one of those good examples of a situation where you might be kind of finishing up the reply part, but also starting to get into Unit 3. There's a bit of a typo here that I've actually fixed in the Google Doc. It'll update in Blackboard pretty soon. So we're moving from structure now to look at setting, but also character is what you'll see when it updates here. So obviously, again, still looking at the short story as the genre that we're focused on and trying to think about the various aspects of it. Truth be told, though, is even though we kind of pull them apart to think about them, analytically, they really are what we want to realize or note in the short stories that we read is how they really work together. So we could almost never talk about setting without also talking about the kind of thematic or symbolic importance it has. It would be hard to talk about character divorced from setting. So even though we kind of compartmentalize the things, we understand that they all work together. So for the short fiction or the structure assignment, again, thinking about kind of like what's often called the narrative arc, how a story is told. Does the action kind of rise really quickly and there's this kind of climactic moment, and then the rest of the story is the aftermath of that? Is there long, slow rising action, and then the story kind of ends with that moment, and we don't maybe get much afterwards? It's not about the symmetry of that Freytag's pyramid or the triangle. It's really how authors manipulate that concept or that abstract idea. So now we can look at our Unit 3 assignment or set of assignments. We have a new set of readings to do. Again, one of the fun parts of the course is just getting exposed to like lots of different stories and kinds of literature that you maybe would just never stumble on, randomly or on your own. So we have a set of 3 short stories. They're very different in a lot of ways, but I do choose them because they have certain kinds of thematic connections, or maybe they have other types of characters that are similar maybe, or who go through similar experiences. So if you're beginning to see a little bit of a pattern in some of them, not coincidental. But I did try to choose ones from different time periods, different gender of author, just a wide diversity of perspectives. So that's the place to start, obviously, is doing those. And then we have 2 assignments that we're going to do that are separate from one another, helping us to think about or look at setting and then character in particular. Even though, like I said, your discussion of character, for example, could very well include mention of setting because it's hard to really separate those. So for setting, we're going to use a tool called Padlet, which is actually one of my favorite, educational little digital tools to use. The way that we use it, you're going to use your smartphone. So this is a mobile assignment. You don't sit at your computer and do this or just Google stuff. You actually do it as part of your everyday life, basically. The tool itself is really user-friendly, which is why I like it. You don't have to have an app. There's no account to sign up for necessarily. You just sort of go to the site and you're ready to go. So you go to this URL. You'll see the whole thing in Blackboard here. Do that on your smartphone. Just open a browser on your smartphone, whatever you happen to use, and go to this particular address. And it will take you to what I like to think of as just like a digital corkboard almost, where we can pin different things. We're all going to be working in the same shared space, so it's really cool because as we do the assignment, you'll see the space populate with the pictures that people are taking. And again, it's meant to be mobile, so you don't sit at your computer and do it. You don't Google a picture of, Dublin, for example, where Araby takes place. That's not really what we're doing. You're meant to have the assignment in your mind and kind of do it just as in the course of your regular day. So what you'll do is, or the assignment itself is looking for you to find certain kinds of settings, right, that you encounter in your real everyday life that remind you of settings from one of the stories. So they're not going to be literally like New England, for example, or New York City, where the lesson takes place, or like I said, Dublin, Ireland, at the turn of the century. It's not that literal kind of a setting. You want to think about setting in these stories in terms of how they create a kind of atmosphere or mood, right? The work that setting does in a short story beyond just literally, here's where it's happening. How does it sort of like affect or shape the characters? How does it communicate theme? And again, you can sort of think of it like what atmosphere is communicated by setting. And there's lots of different ways that setting works too. There's the sort of smaller spaces that characters inhabit, whether it's particular rooms in a house, for example, or a particular house or apartment. Could be a neighborhood. It could be that whole city if it's named and seems to impact the story in a way. So what you want to do is really think about setting as those settings operate in each of the stories. And then in the course of your regular life, if you come upon a particular setting that's not, again, literally the same as the stories, but sort of like emotionally or atmospherically reminds you of a setting in a story, then you take a picture. You go to the web address here. It'll take you to the corkboard. You can like tap anywhere in a blank spot, or there's also a little plus icon that is off my screen right now, but it'll show up on yours. And do a post. And the app is pretty fluid. It just lets you take a picture right there in the spot. You can add some text. The main thing that you have to add is your name, because that's the only way that I can know whose post is whose and grade them properly. And you want to do 3 pictures, not necessarily one for each story. It's not really designed like that, but you do want kind of like a selection of things going on, or a variety of things going on. That's a better term. And you can use the text feature here to sort of explain your post. Again, like this made me think of the setting in the lesson when the main character is, and then sort of fill that blank in so you can explain it a little bit. But it's really the picture that should be doing most of that work here. And again, I can't stress enough, the most important part is that you're doing this as a mobile assignment. So again, on your smartphone, open the browser, you see a setting like just in your normal routine of things that kind of evokes the same feel or atmosphere as something that you encountered in one of the stories, right? Open the browser, go to our Padlet web link, and then post it right then and there. Make sure your name is on it, like I said. So it's a pretty cool way, I think, of really connecting like our everyday existences, our lives, with the literature that we're reading, because we're seeing how we are in settings all the time and how they can sort of shape like even our mood or our emotional state. We kind of know this, right, just from our experience of being in the world, but it's good to be conscious and intentional about it. And of course, to make the connection from the literature that we're reading to, the reality of our everyday existence. So kind of a fun assignment, but again, not the typical sit at your computer and do it. You have to sort of be actively thinking about this almost all the time, really. Make sure that you post 3 pictures, and again, make sure that your name is there and that there's a little explanation of what's going on. The other assignment that we're doing will have us focused a little bit more on character as opposed to, say, setting or maybe short story structure per se. A little more traditional approach here, although even this is, there's lots of room for creativity. So we're going to return to our portfolios that we set up in Unit 1, your web page. Create a new page. We'll call it Unit 3 Character Comparison or something along those lines. Just helps us keep things organized. A little walkthrough of creating new pages. And then the assignment is fairly traditional, even maybe if the delivery mode isn't totally traditional. You're just going to pick 2 characters from 2 separate stories that we read for this unit and compare them. We're interested in similarities. We already know that they're different characters, so you want to find some points of connection. It doesn't have to be main characters. In fact, it's sometimes really interesting to think about how minor characters or characters that aren't clearly the main focus of the story maybe function in their stories in similar ways. They could be really different on the outside, but once you peel back some of those layers, we discover some really interesting connections between them. So you want to use your web space here, again, not just to like write a bunch of text on the web, but to think about how you can build in other elements of text, image, audio, video, use kind of like graphic design or visual design, right, to make your comparison make sense. We still want to make sure that it's grounded in evidence from the text, so you're quoting directly from the stories to support your analysis, but don't feel like you just have to write 5 paragraphs on this and that's it. It should still be in-depth, obviously, but you have a lot more creativity and flexibility as far as including things that are not just text, and also using the visual layout of the page to help sort of like bring your comparison to life. Making sure that you publish right once your work is done so that it's kind of official on your site. Posting your updated portfolio URL to our discussion board here. And then the reply assignment here is to visit some of your classmates and reply to at least 4 of their comparison pages. Again, using the discussion board reply feature to do those replies, not replying to an actual portfolio page. So again, pretty straightforward kind of comparative assignment. We're just using the medium of the web to make it a little more creative, a little more flexible. Ultimately, again, trying to think about how characters can seem very different on the surface, but actually if we dig a little bit deeper and think about how they function in their stories, their relationship to other characters, their relationship, like I said, to theme in each of the works that we're reading, all of a sudden we discover behind the scenes kind of these really fascinating points of similarity. I think that's about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Again, quoting, ample quotation from the story, maybe multiple quotes to prove a point. Still, you want to explain the comparison, so it can't just be a picture and a quote, and then I'm left to figure the thing out. So you're not necessarily writing one continuous essay, but there's still text that you're using to explain the comparison or the points of comparison. Oh, that reminds me of the thing that I wanted to say. As we compare, you want a fairly granular comparison. In other words, we don't just want like they're both adults or they're both male or some really broad category that we could lump like a zillion characters into. So you sort of have to get a little bit more specific. You have to find that balance between so general it's really not even a point of comparison, like it applies to, like I said, so many things or people. And obviously if we get too detailed, then no 2 characters are going to be connected because we're looking too specifically at them, like there are always going to be those differences. We're trying to find that middle ground between, or that lets us see characters who maybe don't appear at first blush on the surface to be really similar, but if we look a little bit deeper, we actually find those points of connection. So there's kind of like an element of discovery here, even of surprise on the part of the person who's reading your comparison, something that is going to make someone say like, oh, I hadn't thought of that connection before. That's kind of what we're going for. Okay, so Unit 3, again, as we move through our short fiction part of our Intro to Lit class, a few new stories to read, the Padlet setting assignment, and then the character comparison using our portfolio spaces. Once again, just wrapping things up here, looking at the due dates. Oh, this is good. It's updated already, so this is right. So we finished up Unit 2. As I'm recording this, wrapping up the reply component, and then jumping into the main work for Unit 3, looking ahead to next week, Tuesday, and then again that reply component turnaround space. Then we have a couple more units on short fiction, and then we'll move into poetry. Okay, so hopefully you're getting kind of settled into the class, figuring out how the due dates work, how our course is set up and structured, all that jazz, where the course menu things are that you need to find. And then if you have any questions or concerns, you can always be in touch with me. I'll talk to everybody soon.